This is Michael Popok. It's time for Legal AF After Dark. Donald Trump tried to go to an appellate court to get a justice there to stay the execution of an over $500 million judgment against him by the New York Attorney General to stop Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, from going and grabbing and liquidating all of his assets in the next 25 days. But that was rejected by the appellate court. Now goes to the full appellate division. But in the meantime, the clock is ticking, and Donald Trump has told the world and the court system that he doesn't have the money to put up. We talk about it on Legal AF. Here's a clip. Let's start with easy. So Donald Trump doesn't like the fact that he's staring down the barrel of about 500 million in change, probably closer to 600 million in double judgments, back to back, one state, one federal. E. Jean Carroll's rape, rape, punitive damage, defamation judgment for 83.5 million, now probably up to about 85 million with 9% running interest in New York. And a bond that has to be posted. If you have to post it, it has to be usually 120% of the judgment amount, plus also a kind of prepayment of interest running. So that's a big bond. But the bond that we're going to talk about here is the one that Judge Engoron just entered the judgment on in the New York civil fraud case when he issued his 93-page ruling, finding that Donald Trump and the others committed persistent fraud for years and installed all sorts of remedies or imposed all sorts of remedies. The money judgment got the big headline. $450 million, which includes $100 million in interest, running with interest at about $3.4 million a month. And then what do you do about it? Now everybody's become like what I am, which is a creditor's rights expert. What do you do with a judgment once you get it? How do you execute on it? And I've done hot take after hot take on this, which is you take the decision in order, which was the 92 pages. You get a judgment from the judge that you usually submit a copy of, and they did that here. The New York Attorney General as the winner. The judge signs the judgment along with the clerk, and then you have an executed judgment. You then take it and give it to the sheriff's department, and you give them a list of assets that you believe exist. If you have the list through your own sleuthing and your own investigation, or, I don't know, calling Barbara Jones, the monitor, and asking her where all the bank accounts are and how much money is in them, then the sheriff goes literally and knocks on the door or sends the garnishment or the levy or the whatever to the various departments of the bank. They freeze the account, and then there's a process by which that money is sucked out. If it's real estate, they put a big padlock on the building and they schedule it for sheriff's sale, issuing a sheriff's deed to the winner in return for money. And every dollar that's collected from the sale of a boat, a masterpiece, a piece of art, Melania's jewelry, whatever they pick up. I've been involved with cases where they picked up the watch that the guy wore in to the deposition to find out where his assets were. Literally, the trustee took the watch off his arm. It was, in fact, the guy wore a Rolex into a debtor deposition was crazy, but he left lighter. He left lighter that moment. So that's how you do it. And that's what Donald Trump is worried about. That as soon as the next, I think it's about 25 days expire, he knows Letitia James and her crew are lined up with the sheriff's department to go grab bank accounts and real estate, maybe even 40 Wall Street. And they get to start selling and liquidating and applying it with running interest. The interest keeps running until the last dollar is paid at 9% annum on the remaining balance, on the wasting balance, as they say. And so until she gets her 450 million plus running interest every last time, she keeps selling assets. Now, she can't collect more than she's entitled to. If she sells an asset, like, I don't know, a building, and it brings in 5.25, and she's only owed at that moment 475, she's got to give back to Donald Trump the other 40 or 50 million, keep the change, so to speak. Donald Trump doesn't want any of that to happen. And he doesn't have the money at the moment. So he filed an emergency application just today with the Appellate Division First Department, which is in Manhattan, which sits over Judge Engoron and all Supreme Court justices over on Madison Avenue. Karen and I have been there a number of times. I got sworn in there in the ceremonial courtroom, and they asked for this emergency stay everything, stay the judgment. I have $100 million. I don't have $500 million. I'm going to win on appeal, and stay every aspect of the judge's order. It's all going to be overturned, and blah blah blah. And they pulled a justice. It was like a day judge, a duty judge, Judge Anil Singh, who I know and I've appeared in front of. And Judge Singh took a look at it and he said, denied as to the money judgment. In other words, I'm not going to stay temporarily for now until the full appeal is heard by the 6-member appellate panel. I'm just an emergency duty judge. I am not staying the money judgment. I'm going to stay, though. This is interesting. I want to get your view on this, Karen. I'm going to stay a couple of other aspects of the judgment for now until the full appellate panel, not the money. I'm going to stay a ban on his ability, on Donald Trump's ability to go borrow money from New York banks. He can kind of still do that right now, or up until the full appellate panel rules. And I'm going to stay the part about him being banned from running businesses or being an officer and director in a business. But the rest and the money, not staying, which means it now has to go to a full appellate panel and be adjudicated there, and they can ask for a stay again. But as of right now, there's only these 3, I think, inconsequential issues that have been stayed by Singh. Why do you think, Karen, Justice Singh threw him a bone and picked out those particular items not to stay while denying the request to stay enforcement of the judgment without bond?
Yeah, look, the money part is really interesting because that's not going away. And so I think he has to come up with that money. He has to come up with the E. Jean Carroll money. He already put up the $5 million for the original E. Jean Carroll money. And I think he lifted the other stuff so that he can borrow the money and put up the bond for the appeal so that Letitia James with the sheriff doesn't have to do things like sell assets, sell buildings, et cetera, because that can be very disruptive to others who are tenants in the building or to other individuals who might have an interest in the building. Also, I have no idea, you probably, because you're much more of an expert in this than I am, but a lot of I doubt that a lot of stuff is in his name, right? Some of it's going to be in the name of trusts or other legal entities. I mean, this is a guy who's declared bankruptcy, 6 times? So I would say it's not his first rodeo in terms of protecting assets because he's filed bankruptcy so many times that he must be an expert in somehow hiding, maybe he's not hiding his assets, but somehow making them bulletproof or somewhat difficult, if not bulletproof, to penetrate. And I also suspect they're highly leveraged, right? He doesn't own these things outright. So if he has $1 billion building, but the mortgage on it and all of the other debts on it is about the value or almost the value of the building, what good is a sale of it going to do, right? Most of the money will go to pay off and service the debt. So I think that the reason that the judge stayed the other part of this is to, number one, not necessarily disrupt the status quo of what's going on in the various businesses. You've got Barbara Jones monitoring things so that they can't do any funny business. They can't really do anything criminal anymore because you've got Barbara Jones in there. So that's kind of safe, right? She's the special monitor. So in some ways, those things are protected and the risk isn't really there. And again, it might be kind of difficult to get this stuff given his expertise in shielding assets from creditors because of his numerous bankruptcies. And so I think that he is in some ways doing a favor for the Attorney General because this way, she doesn't have to do any of that. He can go borrow the rest of the money. He already said today he has $100 million that he can put up. Now he can go borrow the rest. Put the risk on a financial institution. Don't put the risk on anybody else and to have to deal with it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers who are the ones who are entitled to this money from this judgment. So So put the risk with a bank, let him take out a loan, put up the money judgments, and go from there. I mean, he also recently, and you can talk to this, Popok, about the the SPAC, right? The Truth Social SPAC that was recently approved. That I think is what, in 6 months, money will become available to him, and that's supposedly going to be a significant amount of money that he could use towards this as well. So that's why I think that they did it. It seems actually like they were doing the attorney general a favor, frankly.
Yeah, no, I I agree with you on that. Well, it's also completely inconsistent. Whenever I see multiple lawyers taking different positions, it always concerns me. So Cliff Robert apparently is the one, because he's the New York lawyer on the team of Haba and Kais, who files these kind of motions. But I and but he can't run away from, things that Alina Habba said. I mean, we all saw Alina Habba in her one of these friendly softball interviews on Newsmax say that Donald Trump's a billionaire. Of course, he has the money to put up all of the bonds. Well, apparently he doesn't. As Ben likes to say, let's go to the clip.
My
Just
goodness.
a little.
My goodness. So Judge Engoron says that he wants this $350 million within 30 days. Now, I know that you're planning on appealing this, but you've still got to put up the full amount pending that appeal. Does Donald Trump have that kind of money sitting around?
Yes. I mean, he does. Of course, he has money. He's a billionaire. We know that.
Yeah, well, he's a billionaire that doesn't have. He apparently has about 350 million in cash. He's going to have to sell assets, and sell real estate. A point noted by the New York Attorney General in her opposing papers today. She also pointed out in the papers that the reason she needs security, just like any other. When I say she, it's the people of the state of New York that's embodied by the New York Attorney General. So it's not the New York Attorney General's judgment. It is the people of the state of New York's judgment. The money will go into the general treasury of New York and be used for other things, just not things that for Donald Trump's lifestyle. But she even said in there, you can't trust him. You can't trust him to get away with $100 million, 1/4 secure judgment for me and for the people of the state of New York. For instance, and she gave two examples. For instance, he moved $40 million while the trial was going on and the monitor was in place without telling her, which was reported by the monitor, Barbara Jones. And secondly, they said, and Judge, in just the last week, speaking to the appellate judge, in just the last week, all of a sudden Trump dropped out of the blue, or mentioned out of the blue, that he moved his businesses to Florida with new Florida addresses, which is exactly the kind of dissipation of assets, fraudulent transfer that she's worried about as a justification. I'm sure that resonated with Judge Singh, especially since we've got the liar over here up there with Alina Habba saying, of course he's a billionaire. Of course he's got the money. Well, of course he does not. Now let me talk about the SPAC that you raised. That's very interesting. I got a hot take. I don't think it's going up today, maybe the next day or so. But the New York Times did a very good outline about this. We've talked a lot about the SPACs. I worked for a company that was a SPAC sponsor, so I sort of understand this world. People might have lost track that Donald Trump and his Truth Social tried to merge with a special purpose acquisition company. That's what we call it, a SPAC, which is a short form, sort of fast track way to go public. But there were a lot of problems with that. No, this shouldn't shock anybody. Like there was illegal insider trading going on. There was a whistleblower. There was evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission that there was violations of the SPAC rules, because the SPAC vehicle, the entity, is not supposed to disclose to the investors who they take their money in. That's why it's called a blank check vehicle, blank check SPAC, who their target is. In other words, they say to a group of investors, this is how you get around from Securities and Exchange Commission rules and regulations. You say, we haven't targeted a company yet. We're, going to do something maybe in entertainment, maybe in social media. Give us your money at $10 a unit. We'll take your money, and within a year, we'll make the investment. If you like the investment, you stay in the investment. If you don't like the investment, we'll give you your money back. That's the special world of SPACs. You're not supposed to, the acquiring company is not supposed to have a target in mind, and certainly shouldn't be telling the investors. But they did. And the evidence was that they knew they were going to acquire Truth Social, and that certain of the investors knew that too. And that is a no-no. And so the Securities and Exchange Commission held up that deal for over a year. But now they gave approval to it. So on March the 24th, Donald Trump holds 79 million shares in this company. And at the current rate, listen, MAGA created their own meme stock like GameStop, and they bid up that price to $47 a share from when it was 10. Well, do the math. 47 times 79 million is $4 billion-ish. The problem is, on the papers, he can't get to it for 6 months. There's a lockup provision. But there's always an exception. If he can get the shareholders to let him access the money right now, then he can sell the shares, crushing the price and crushing those very investors that just gave him permission. Because if he sells $500 million or $1 billion worth of shares, it's going to tank the market. And even if he doesn't do that, right now, once he gets the little shares in his fat little hands, he can gift that to his family members. He can transfer it to close family members. So he gifts it over or transfers it over to Don Jr., and then Don Jr. uses that money to go get a loan and gives the loan to Daddy. But look, there's a lot of pages left on the calendar, Karen, between now and March the 22nd. And the judgments will all be, without bonds, without stays, are all going to be able to be executed on. And that's what we're watching right now. While he's continuing to be the leading, the Republican nominee for office.
Craziness. Sorry, I had to find the mute button.
That's all right. Okay,
that happens every once in a while.
Right. So look, that's where we are there. I think the bigger problem for him, and we're going to talk about it later, and you're going to lead on it, is the Manhattan DA issue, because it's his first. We get fatigued with Donald Trump, not on this network, but in general, and he's got his first criminal trial on March 25th that he has to go to every day and be a defendant in a criminal trial with a jury in New York about business fraud. This is not, everyone's like Teflon Don. He's got $100 million judgment, a $500 million judgment, and a likely conviction sometime in April or May in New York. That is not a Teflon Don as far as I'm concerned. Well, there's an example of what we do every week, twice a week on Legal AF, the leading podcast at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, every Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesdays with Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and me, and on Saturdays with Ben Mysalis and me. You like lawyers talking about things at the intersection of law, politics, and justice when they know what they're talking about? You've come to the right place. The MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Free subscribe. Help them get to 3 million before the election. It's that important. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.